God, what month are we in? September? In the humongous 25? Wow. Also, sorry for the wait. I have just been absolutely brain dead trying to think of a good video idea, and I came across this. A COVID-19 retrospective. Also, I will say COVID is still very much around, but it hasn't been a pandemic since May 2023. So yeah, just saying. This video will be presented in a history lesson format, in a way, and it's going to be pretty weird, considering most of us lived through it, assuming you aren't watching this video in 2045. But that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to include a few personal tidbits from the time period, and include some guests while we're at it. So let's go. Okay, where do we begin? I guess from the virus itself. COVID-19. COVID-19 stands for Coronavirus Disease 2019, which is from the virus strain of SARS-CoV-2. The earliest cases of the virus can be traced back as far as November 2019 in Wuhan, China, likely caused from a zoonotic spillover from a bat at a local wet market, with most evidence supporting this idea. The virus continued to spread quickly around the country until early January 2020, when the virus hitched a ride out of the country and spread across Thailand and Japan. A couple of weeks later, officials confirmed the first case of COVID-19 had reached the United States after a man came back from his trip from Wuhan. On January 23, 2020, China realized that the virus had moved pretty fast and decided to put the city of Wuhan under quarantine, along with other cities within the Hebei province. Unfortunately, the virus continued to spread around, and after a total of 118,000 cases, 4,000 deaths, spread across 114 countries, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic on March 11, 2020, and from then on, things got stupid. But first, I want to mention a little anecdote I remember from grade 6, about a month before the pandemic. I remember my ICF teacher just telling the class something along the lines of, "Hey, so there's new virus going around, don't worry about it too much, it should be fine. If you have it or whatever, just come to school, you'll be good." Okay, maybe not that last bit, but I do remember him being fairly relaxed about the whole thing, which I guess kind of makes sense. You don't want to scare a bunch of 12-year-olds for literally no reason, but I just think it's a funny little tidbit of information I remember. And speaking of schooling, let's start there. In the early days of the pandemic, due to quarantine and lockdown measures, many schools were forced to switch to remote or digital learning, which meant you were forced to use a laptop or tablet to access files and video calls using whatever software your school district assigned. My school had to use Microsoft Teams for all of that, and we would regularly go on to a video call with our teacher, who would explain whatever French or standard assignment we had to complete. And I remember for one of our math assignments, there was one very basic math question, and it was so easy that I even questioned if I read the assignment right. But nope, it was just really, really simple. It was like a first grade level math question that had something to do with frogs, I think. And you would just do that, rinse and repeat for 2 more months until the school year ended. Out in the real world, many governments and agencies began setting up protocols to help reduce the spread of the virus. Some of these included social distancing up to 6 feet or 2 meters, wearing a surgical or N95 mask, the aforementioned quarantine, and in some places, vaccine passports. Obviously, those were set up later when vaccines, were rolling out. Which, fun fact, the vaccines were developed pretty quickly, not through a government conspiracy where they were all pre-planned, but rather banger technology. Let me explain. The vaccine was developed through mRNA methods. The mRNA vaccine works by using the genetic code of the virus to make a pretend version of the spike protein, which is the part of the virus that attaches to the cells and harms them. This pretend spike protein is exposed to your body, which attacks your immune system, but it creates antibodies to protect against the actual virus. You got that? If not, go watch this TED-Ed video from 2021 that goes into further detail about the vaccine. It's in the description below if you want to view it. Moving on. Alright, now that we have all that covered, I'm going to get a couple of my YouTuber friends to tell some of their pandemic stories. Not anything too crazy, but just a little something to expand the video a little bit more.
So when school finally went back in person, they limited the number of kids that could sit at each lunch table for social distancing reasons or whatever. And the table I was at with all my friends just so happened to be one over that limit. When a teacher said someone had to move, nobody volunteered. So I figured, alright, I'll volunteer. Surely someone will come with me, right?
Oh no.
Turns out I gave my friends too much credit because not a single one cared and I ate lunch alone. So yeah, not a big fan of COVID.
Wow, what an enchanting, delightful tale, Boxmation. Howdy, I'm Jack, and I want to discuss my experience with quarantine. I was in my first year of high school, and we all got sent home with the belief that it would only be closed for 2 weeks. Didn't go as expected. We were hardly allowed to leave the house for months. All I did was grind on Fortnite with the lads, animate, and pretend to pay attention on online classes. Anyways, back to you, Malcolm. Yes.
Alright, peak stories. Audience, give them a round of applause. I think we should talk about some other aspects of the pandemic, like the toilet paper stuff. Remember that? Honestly, I don't remember the toilet paper craze itself, but I sure as hell remember the aftermath of all that. That being that stores had to restrict how many of what items were being sold because people were snatching toilet paper by the forklift. Now, what actually happened was that at the start of the pandemic, many people believed that there would be impending shortages due to a potential supply chain collapse. However, in reality, there was no major disruptions to the supply chain, and also toilet paper wasn't going to disappear anyway. Mass hysteria is awesome. Alright, what else? Oh yeah, so like I mentioned in my internet video 2 years ago, I said that online school for me only lasted from March to June 2020, and I returned to in-person classes in the fall under heavy restrictions. And oh boy, that was interesting. Fast forward to September 2020, and I was not feeling too hot. In fact, I was sick. I had corona. I'm just pulling your leg. I did not have COVID. What I actually had was strep throat. Like, that's any better. But I knew I had strep throat because for some random reason, I'd usually get it like once every year. As of now, it's been a while. But I still was sent to school, and I remember coughing a bit, and my friend was like, "You have COVID," and then told everyone else that I did, which, looking back, whether or not I had COVID, they still sort of stayed away from me, and me from them, and yeah. By the way, I did get tested with the spin in a cup version of the COVID test, so I didn't get to do the brain tickler. At least not then. God, I hated it. Cool, we covered the history, said some personal stories, yada yada. And there we go. And then the COVID-19 pandemic was declared over in May 2023, as I mentioned earlier, just over 3 years later. As a result of the pandemic, one major thing it taught humanity is that remote work and schooling is possible. Probably for the worst, to be honest with you. Again, I hated remote schooling. Another major thing the pandemic has done is increase depression around the world, with the main cause being social isolation. Again, take a look at the school system. In 2021, many schools started to reopen with many restrictions in place. Many students felt disconnected with their peers and began to suffer mentally. According to the CDC, in early 2021, after surveying over 7,000 students across the United States, they found that over 53.4% of students felt disconnected from their peers than previously, with 46.6% remaining being the opposite. But hey, those were from 2021, so if I had to guess, they probably lowered, which means more people are back together. I think. Hopefully. But don't quote me on that, though. Post-isolation, many people seemed unsure how to interact with others again, which probably helps explain the whole devious lick trend around the same time, with everything feeling chaotic. People were looking for ways to release their pent-up energy, but that's just how I see it. Still, it was a stupid trend, but that's my rationale for it. But at the end of the day, it was still just theft. It was still stupid. And that is my 2025 retrospective on the COVID-19 pandemic. If you have any stories or fun anecdotes from the time period, feel free to share them in the comments below. Thankfully, life has been back to normal, as much as it can be at least, for quite some time now, and the pandemic is long gone, but not forgotten. Okay, technically it's not been undeclared a pandemic, just no longer a health emergency, whatever, screw you. It's no longer a pandemic, no one's wearing face masks anymore, and now we can relax, knowing that nothing like that will ever happen again in our entire lifetimes. Yep, we'll be completely fine. Hopefully. God damn it, I didn't even mention Among Us. Motherfuck.
Boom. Vlogmation line is done. Let me know if that's good. I think, I think it sounded pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it sounded pretty good. Dude, Jack Swirl is gonna say my name? Oh my god, dude, that's crazy. Oh man. I am so excited for that. Alright.